My name is Vicki Mizel, and it's my pleasure to disseminate this information with you. My uncle got Alzheimer's about 20 years ago. In order to be able to help him, I had to figure out a way to get the memory system that I'd been working with to work with Alzheimer's people. So that was really what got me started in the beginning. One of the biggest complaints about Alzheimer's people is they say, I tell them the same thing 25 times an hour, and nothing can go in. I mean, nothing stays, and it's frustrating for you, it's frustrating for them. They can't remember that they've asked you 25 times. So I want to talk a little bit about when a brain is short-circuiting, the message signals change the way we're able to take in information and the way we're able to hold information. So what I want to talk to you about today is first a little bit about how our memory works, a little bit about things on the left and the right side of the brain, and then be able to show you applications of how some of these methods can actually work with Alzheimer's people so they can actually hold an image. They won't remember, they can't cue themselves, but you can cue them and they will remember. So I'll give you a quick example. Many years ago, I was working at the Alzheimer's Family Center in San Diego, and there was a lovely man named Bert. And every day, Bert would say to the nurse, excuse me, lovely miss, could you tell me when is my wife coming to pick me up? This was a daycare center. And she'd say, oh, Bert, your wife will be here at 4:30. And he'd say, thank you very much, and he'd won. And a few minutes later, he'd get up and he'd say, oh, miss, excuse me, could you tell me, please, when is my wife coming to pick me up? And it would be like this 25 times an hour, you know, and she's like, Bert, oh. So she came to me, she said, Vicki, help, help, what can we do? So I said, okay, here's the thing. When you can see an image in your mind, now Bert can't, if I said to Bert, see the clock on the wall at 4:30, there's no recognition of a clock on the wall for an Alzheimer's patient, especially in second and third stages. But if I say, Bert, I remember the Opera House in Minsk that you talked about. And in the Opera House in Minsk, there's a big clock. Remember the big clock? Yeah, I love the clock. Can you imagine? Now, this is your imagination. Remember, like a Disney cartoon. Remember Disney? You know, Donald Duck, Mickey Mouse. Oh, yeah, okay. You imagine taking the hand of the clock and you're turning it to 4:30. He said, oh, in my mind? He said, yeah, so let's do it together. So when you're having them do a physical action, okay, with the inner vision, which they still have in their mind, and a connection where there's a interactive touching, all of a sudden you've encoded the information now in a different way. And I'll explain that a little bit more further. So I said, okay, so let's turn the hand of the clock. And we do it a couple of times. So now this has become an impression in his mind. I said, now imagine your wife has entered the door. You know it's at 4:30 because you just turned the hand of the clock to 4:30. And you give your wife a big hug. And he says, my wife, she loves me. She hugs me all the time. And you go, yes, Bert, that's great. That's exactly. Now feel that feeling, you know. And if you want to fool around a little, you know, you do something like this, you know. So then the third thing is to say, okay, now your wife's hugged you. Now imagine she's opening the car door. You feel the leather of the car, smell the smell of the leather. Get into the car. Remember how it feels to sit into the car. And then your wife's in the car and you're driving home. So then we repeated it a couple of times, and then after that, Bert would say, excuse me, miss, would you like to meet my wife? She'll be here today, 4:30. Oh. That little bit changed completely. So let me explain to you why, how that happened. We have the left side of the brain, and we have the right side of the brain. Does anyone know which side controls what side?
Right is artistic.
Memory, the right.
The right controls the left.
Right,
Oh.
that's it. So our left side controls the right side of the body, and the right side controls the left side of the body. So,
I
yeah.
remember that because
someone said, if you have a stroke on one side, it doesn't affect that side, it affects the opposite side.
Exactly. So our left side is our verbal ability. So when we're talking, like what I'm doing now, that's the left side of my brain operating. If there is a stroke on the left side, that would inhibit speech. Now, and the right side is nonverbal. So one of the things that Alzheimer's people are extremely attuned to is body language, tone, facial expression. In the same way, their instincts are very high. They might not have the words, but they look at your face and if they see a warm smile, they relax. If they hear a soft tone, they feel ease. When they see your face struggling for them to get a word out, it makes them more anxious. And we all know what happens when we feel anxious. What happens? We get tighter, we forget to breathe, right? And then when we don't take that moment and get centered, we can just, go off. And then here's this poor person, now all frightened, already frightened because their brain isn't operating. They don't know where placement is, like where the bathroom was this way and the living room's this way. They have no sense of where they are in space. So there's no anchoring from this place to that place. So well, you know how we feel when we can't remember where we left our car? And then after it's not in the 3 places we looked, our hands get cold, right? We're nervous. Then we start thinking all kinds of thoughts. This is how an Alzheimer's person is a lot of the time, especially if they're asked to do anything on their own and they can't call up the pictures. So just by someone's facial expression or body language, you can do a lot to just help keep them comfortable and relaxed. Now, let's say one of the people you're working with, they're extremely agitated and you feel like they're unconsolable. There's things you can do which, if you know one thing about the person, just even one thing about them. Let's say one woman loved to take walks on the beach with her husband, and she's in an agitated state. Let's say her name's Matilda. You say, Matilda, oh, I see you're agitated. Wasn't that the song, Waltzing Matilda, Waltzing Matilda? They can focus on one thing at a time. So all of a sudden you got her attention off from where she was. And then you say, I remember you talking about loving the beach. Can you imagine just the blue waters of the beach? What does that sound like? Can you imagine hearing the waves? And now, within a few minutes, you've got her at the beach with the waves. Then what you want to do, whatever it is you want them to do, let's say one of the biggest, hugest problems is bathtub, right? I'm seeing faces. I don't want to take it. Ah! Okay, so you say, what do you like when you're on the beach and remember when you feel the sun, how warm it is? Imagine, and you have them close your eyes. Let's all do that together just for a moment. Imagine for a moment, close your eyes, and just feel the warmth of the sun on the beach. Feel how it penetrates your face, your arms, your legs. How warm now the sand is to your touch. Imagine hearing the waves. And know that at any time you can always call upon that image in your mind and then feel the feelings and change your body state. So take a moment, maybe put your hand on your shoulder, anchor in the feeling, tell yourself, I can always call this up at any time I want. And when you feel ready, then just open your eyes. Now, how did that make you feel?
Relaxed.
Was it immediate? Okay. So that's exactly how we can work with the Alzheimer's person, is our thoughts actually affect our feelings. How many people believe that, just by a show of hands? Thoughts affect feelings. Okay. How many thought feelings affected thoughts? Okay. So when we have them think a thought and then make it a tangible picture, using all the senses, So when we talk about the left brain is verbal and the right brain nonverbal, facial expression or body language, also on the left side of the brain is abstract. So if we think of a cumulus cloud or a Picasso painting or even somebody's name is actually an abstract picture, right? What do I mean when I say abstract?
This part not well defined.
Exactly.
Just various colors, various shapes, various figures, just a little different, unique in its in and of
Exactly, exactly. So it's vague, right? It's vague. It's not something that's elusive. You can't hold on to it. But the opposite of that would be what?
itself. Concrete.
Exactly, exactly. So be concrete. And concrete is anything that we can, like this chair here, right? We can see it. We wouldn't really taste it, but maybe a puppy or a baby would, right? We could smell it. If this is new or old, you can get a sense of the smell. We can touch it, and we can feel it. So by taking something abstract and immediately making it into a picture, and then using all of the senses, making connections with them, now we've changed something from might be more short-term memory into longer-term memory. Sensory. The sensory memory is the first memory we're actually exposed to as babies when we touch and smell. So when a baby's first placed on its mother and then it's changed to somebody else, you know, it knows. It doesn't even have language yet, but it knows from the sense and the smell where it belongs. Who's stranger, who's familiar. Then we have short-term memory. How many of you know how long short-term memory is? Anyone want to guess?
About 2 minutes.
2 minutes, okay. Someone else said something.
Immediate.
Okay. Any other votes? Pam, how long do you think short-term memory is?
Probably a minute.
Okay, actually,
Or less.
yes, it's actually 7 to 30 seconds. Now, this isn't all the psychology books, but why it's not from the time we're in first grade, I don't know. So 30 seconds, that even means Einstein's memory. So many times we're presented with information, it makes us think about something else, then we forgot where we were, and then we think we have a bad memory. We go, oh no, we have bad memory, forgot that. You don't have a bad memory. You have a 30-second memory to get the information in. And that's why up until now, we would repeat the information, right, over and over and over again until we thought it would sink in. But if you make it a picture, like Pam, we look at Pam, but what in our mind, what is the word Pam? What could it remind us of? Something that we already know of that's tangible. Anybody? That's exactly it. Perfect. A Pam spray, right? So Pam spray, we can feel it, we can spray it, we see the pan like that, and so we hear the word Pam, and instead of it being a 30-second shot, now we see the image, and now we've got it long-term memory.
Association.
Yeah, in that respect. But association actually has to do with the linking part. So this just has to do with changing information into visual pictures. And this is the key with our Alzheimer's people, is being able to turn the information into pictures. Then, when you said association, then it's making the connection, like with Bird. We had him touching the clock. Then we had him hugging his wife. Then we had his wife putting him into the car. So each one of those did have a connection. So when you make something visual, unusual, and in motion, those three together make it for an outstanding recall, or what we would call more long-term memory. How long do you think long-term memory is? Right, it's forever. Now, an Alzheimer's person can't initiate and say, oh, by the way, I remember that wonderful feeling that, you helped me with remembering the song Matilda and walking Matilda and the beach. They might get agitated again, and you'd say, Matilda, what was that image that you remember, we were doing, walking on the beach and the ocean? Oh, yeah. Then she can go right into it. So you have to work with them in building the picture. Okay, so we went over 3 types of memory. So we have short-term, sensory, short-term, and long-term. And then the left side of the brain and the right side of the brain, verbal and nonverbal. And then on the left side, abstract and concrete. So that's really the main information that you need to have working with your Alzheimer's people. Just those simple things. And then when you make a connection, then that really helps them anchor in the information even more. One of the things, too, that I have found works so well is I'll ask them about something. What is important to you? What's still important to you in your life? You know? And oftentimes it'll be family, grandchildren, their parents. And you can use that same thing as like close your eyes and imagine the person that's most important to you and see their face in your mind. And then say, think of a happy memory. Tell me about a happy memory. And literally go around the room. And each one will say, oh, a moment with my parents, or my brother lived. You know, he got burned badly and we were able to take care of it. Or my father got on horseback and he was the only doctor in the town. And he rode 2 miles and he saved a little girl. And it made me so proud that my daddy saved the little girl. Now this may be someone 90 years old. And she remembers being 8 when her daddy was the hero. Now, what are we feeling just hearing a story like that? Right? We feel really good on the inside. So as you rehearse with them reminiscence, and they're connecting their brain, actually these connections are still in there, you're stimulating their abilities. And as you do this over time, maybe a month or 2 months or 3 months, then what happens is those little neural branches are starting to increase the connections. And as the connections increase, their speed of being able to take in the information, retain the information, and recall the information becomes easier. And just like Christopher Reeve with his constant stimulation of electrodes and exercise, and someone's literally pushing the pedal on his leg and the electrodes are coming in and doing the stimulation over time, and as we know, it was plenty of time, 7 years. Now this is moving. Now we don't know what's going on the inside, and they haven't done enough studies to say yes, it's exercise, but that's what he says. It's exercise. Exercising my limbs is what's giving me motion, because there's memory stored in the cells that still know how to move. They still know what to do, and they want to do that. Every Alzheimer's person that you are with, they want to remember. They want to not be so anxious. They want to have the goodness in their life. Now, maybe some of them forgot because the losses were so great. You know, many people will get Alzheimer's disease. I think there are definitely physical components because of the different ways of cell death. But what has not been addressed in the papers, the medical papers, is the emotional component. And one of the things that our research has found is that depression can actually cause memory loss. And most seniors who've been married, and these people have been married 40, 50, 60 years. And there's something in our brain called the limbic system. Anyone know about that? It's called our limbic system.
Limbic.
It's a limbic system. It's a part of our brain that's actually connected emotionally. So when you have a habit, something you're used to doing, and then it's not there anymore, part of your body's like, I need a replacement, or you miss it. Well, these people are missing their spouse, truly missing a spouse, or a son, or a daughter, or a career. And if they haven't made new pictures with a purpose, not just being busy, everyone can be busy, but something that drives them internally, something that makes them feel so important. You know, I use the Christopher Reeve example, but he's driven internally. I heard him last night being interviewed, and he said, you know, part of me doesn't feel like a handicapped person. He said, all the evidence shows I'm a handicapped person, but something inside me doesn't really recognize it. It's that part of him that doesn't recognize it that's not willing to accept it. So there are some things we can't help. I mean, if someone has pancreatic cancer, they can say, I'm not dying and still be dead in 6 weeks. But the difference in how did they spend their last 6 weeks in life? Did they talk about dying? They talk about the goodness of their life. They talk about the grace that they felt, the people they loved, the people who are nice to them today. You know, there was a woman I worked with at Pacific Gardens. Her name was Ruth. And Ruth always would say, you know, come on in. Tell me how your class went. You know, what are you up to? And she had these marvelous stories of Ellis Island and, you know, stealing an ice cream cone when she was 5 and, you know, how her mother taught her lessons. And then I found out she was on hospice. And so I go in her room and talk to her and get stories from her. She never mentioned dying. She always mentioned she's getting better every day. She had me so convinced that she was going to live another year that I didn't visit her 1 week, and she ended up breaking a hip and she was dead within 3 days. But the difference in her as someone who didn't give up to the end, and somebody else who was told by a doctor the same thing, you have cancer, and he literally came back and he went to his bed. And he said, what have I got to fight for? And his family had given up on him too. So attitude is really key, and it also has a lot to do with the internal well-being. If somebody has an internal well-being, it's going to be easier for them to have an image of what does your bathroom look like. You know, it's got this big pink, you know, I mean, it's very helpful when you put colors on doors or colors, you know, on tiles so they can follow the color. Or they all know that policeman means stop. You know, so if you want them not to wander past a certain point, all you have to do is take a big cardboard picture of a policeman going like this, and they will not enter. Because these are good people. They have manners. They grew up in a time with manners. You know, if you notice, most of them, except the few, they're very cordial. And those manners are intrinsic within their being. You know, one man may have forgotten how to cough, but he hasn't forgotten that he wants to call his wife to see how she's doing because he wants to know how her needs are being met since he's in the home and she's not there. Because he remembered when he traveled, how he'd call and be aware of his absence for her. So the richness and the beauty of these people is still ever present. And the thing that they do remember the most is how to love. You know, we're all walking around with what we've been taught of inhibitions. You don't run up and kiss a stranger. You know, you don't just let somebody take your hand and follow them. But a lot of the Alzheimer's people, those inhibitions aren't there. So you walk in and they go, oh, I'm so happy to see you, my baby, my baby. Now, how many of us, unless we're really happily married or have a great relationship or our grandparents are still alive, how many times do we get that kind of welcome, right? We get it from a puppy. You get it from your kids, right? Until they're teenagers. Yeah. So I think that's a thing to remember is here is really a still fully, wholly intact human being. Very high level of emotional feelings. Every feeling that they've ever had still exists. Happiness, sadness, joy, love, forlornness, anxiety, anger, jealousy. They're all in there. And so all we need to do is look to their face and communicate to what we see. And as they start to get attention paid to them, you'll start to see them come more to life. You know how when they say, wow, you're happiest I've ever seen you? You must be in love. And it's because of the attention, you know, that we get. All of a sudden we're happier. We meet somebody, They see you, they get you, they connect with you. All of a sudden, you're powerful and brave, and you can do things because you can go back to them and get that good feedback. And that's what they look to you for, to connect in so that what's still presently there is still available. Yes?
I think it's true as educators of older adults that often we're always thinking about content. And often the response I get the most from people is, it's your personality that I remember. It's your person that you bring here that I remember. And I think sometimes we forget that we're so worried about what exactly we're presenting. And often the feedback I get is it's the feeling of connecting to you and missing you, not necessarily missing what you necessarily taught them. It's missing you. I think it's a very different shift than other types of education because that emotional component is so strong.
Absolutely. I'd say they may not remember what we did in class, but they remember how they felt. And all they know is that they felt better. They feel good. They see me and they go, ah, I feel better already. So now they have associations. Then they're having what we call neural associations. So all they have to do sometimes now is think of you, and they feel calm. And in that calm state, they can take in more information. Yes?
What about their ability to read? Are they much into that? I know my dad is 86. He's an avid reader. He has a remarkable short-term and long-term memory, and I think that helps stimulate that.
Oh, yeah. I mean, reading,
He's better than us.
What?
He's better than us in terms of long-term and short-term. He's fantastic.
So your dad's still
Avid reader.
agile. He's not Alzheimer's. He's in good shape.
The bookmobile pulls in so many yards from his home, and they bring books to his door.
Yeah,
But he's always reading, and I think that really keeps him sharp and keen.
absolutely. Yeah, when we're reading, we're learning new things. You're taking in a new character, you're taking in impressions, you're taking in a life. You're actually, and if he's a visual learner and he can also feel the feelings of the character, he's going to take in that information and then he's going to mull it over. Then he's going to be thinking about it. All these things are stimulating our brain. When I say to my group, what have you done, to keep yourself stimulated? Reading is one. Crossword puzzles, drawing, painting, learning languages, learning an instrument, and then they have, memory systems to add to that. So, any other questions?
Even for myself, sometimes I come home frustrated, and now I started taking piano lessons, and I feel so good. I'm on that piano for hours. My instructor tells me I'm the best student he has, even better than the kids.
Yeah.
I stay on there for hours. I just enjoy it so much.
That's it. You're in your right brain.
Yeah.
Actually, your right brain has to do with no time. So when you're enjoying something so much, you just completely forget what time it is.
Right.
And you know what? That's something we forget to do. They say, adults forget how to play. Kids, they go to school, they're tired, 3 o'clock rolls around, let's go play. And then all of a sudden there's been a shift and, you feel differently. So really our mind needs constant stimulation. I noticed for myself the first year of working just with seniors, having been before that a high school teacher, part of me started missing kids. And I was tired a lot. And then I picked up a few hours doing, some volunteer time at a high school. And all of a sudden I wasn't tired anymore. And then my mind started thinking, hey, we should put seniors together with teenagers. Then the teenagers will get the support they need, a loving, unconditional love person, and the seniors would feel, valued and important again. So, yeah, we'd have a whole, society again differently.
So it's nice, the activity director suggested to me, and I thought it was a very good idea. He said, when we have the singing, this music appreciation, let's get a choir together amongst the seniors. That was a good idea.
Yeah. Yeah, a lot of people have that in their church. The seniors that I have found that are in the best shape are the ones that continue doing what has always interested them. There's a woman who's 90 who is still doing yoga, and she's better than any of the 20-year-olds because she's been doing it for 60 years. And she still dances. And you should see a lot of these women. They still have really great petite little figures, and they dress beautifully with their, you know, their crystal jewels, and, you know, actually have better posture than me. And in fact, Ruth, when I was talking to you about it, I'd say, Ruth, you know, how was your day? What'd you do? She goes, well, I'm up to 7:30, and I take my shower, and then I go downstairs and eat with everybody, and then, you know, we have classes all day. And I said, well, do you read? She goes, well, no, I don't have time during the day. And then, you know, we have lunch, and then she does her afternoon activities, and maybe she'll take a short nap, have dinner, and then she'll watch TV with everyone maybe for an hour, and then she gets into bed at 9 o'clock and reads till 11. Every night. She reads 2 or 3 books a week. And to me, being around the seniors teaches me how to live. If I live my life every day with a little exercise and a little love and a little connection and keeping my mind stimulated and nutrition, you know, I could continue to be me, you know. Yes?
Vicki, my mom has Alzheimer's, and for the longest time she used to paint, and she was very, very talented in the arts, and did sculpting and stained glass windows and things. And for the longest time she did the painting. That was like the last thing, and now it's to the point, I think it's because it's progressed, that she doesn't even draw now. And colors, sometimes, you know, in the program that she's attending, they do colors and she'll color and things, but I don't know what else to do to get that back, or to try and find some other way for her to be continuing activity, because when she's home, if she's not occupied doing something, she'll just go to sleep.
Yeah, they
So
get depressed.
I don't know how to, you know, focus that, or where I can put her so that she would still do those sorts of things.
I think it's to change the context of, if she painted clear, accurate images, you know, let's say a boat, you knew it was a boat, and flowers were flowers. Change the context of it and say, Mom, I know that right now some of the abilities that you had aren't the same, but you're feeling things. I want you to paint what you feel. Pick a color. Just because I paint, but I have no shape, form, content, zero. And one time I was sick, very ill with the Epstein-Barr virus, and I decided to just go paint the illness. And what was amazing is what comes out of your subconscious mind. That actually, if you communicate from the inside onto canvas what you're feeling, it almost takes it out of you. Now, the other thing is, there actually have been studies that the motor skills can be increased. So if you had her draw a circle, and then every day she drew a circle, it would get stronger. You're actually able, so motor abilities can actually be stimulated, and those memories are still in there. Yeah. You know, there's yoga positions now that are being used that actually can help increase oxygen in the brain, and just help to keep the body relaxed too. So if she's agile, you know, that's something. And walking too. I mean, if they're still mobile, really minimum of half an hour a day of walking is really what's being required by doctors. I went to a convention on Wednesday, and it was the top brilliant brains, their PhD and MDs, who were also directors of clinics, and I couldn't believe how they were all talking about vitamin E, they were all talking about PS 100, they were all talking about, you know, protein, they were talking about blood sugar. I mean, I was so happy that I'm hearing MDs actually say, you got to feed and nourish those cells. Oftentimes I will also tape something off Turner Classics. Like Ken Murray made homemade videos of the early 1917, 1920, 1930s. I have it. He's like, and so I'll take the tape and maybe show 20 minutes and then see what gets stimulated. And one woman said, oh, that reminds me, Clark Gable used to live across the street from us in Encino. You know, and I said, really? I didn't even know Encino. Oh, yeah, Encino, all the big mucky mucks, they all used to live out in the valley because they could have huge acreage. And so they would tell me stories and gossip and all kinds of things. So listen, you know, there's just, I tell them, I say, okay, when you're in the class with me, here's the rule. You are the most valuable and the most important people we have in our society. So I don't care what our culture dictates. This is how it is in here. And who's the eldest? Okay, you're the most valuable. And I talk about the Hunses and other cultures, and you know, that really our elders are the ones to be the revered ones, because they do have the most experience and knowledge, and they have lived through times of seeing things. And they appreciate it because they like to feel honored and respected because they really have lived in life. Yes?
Do you find this country cares less about elderly than other countries?
Well, I think there's individual people and families that still hold great closeness and reverence to their parents and grandparents. But I think in the tone of the culture, we're not like the Japanese, you know, the Asian, the Indian, and parts of what I call parts of Russia where the Hunses live, where the 120-year-olds are the elders and the 80-year-olds are the kids.
Wow.
So if you're 80 in that society, you're a kid. You're the kid. So can you imagine being 80 and feeling like you're the kid?
Unbelievable.
You know, so it's how I think our society dictates how we often feel about ourselves, unless we tend to be, you know, a really strong individual that can be so internally connected that the outside doesn't affect us. But how many of us are that actualized as human beings, you know? I'd like to be able to go back to the old ways because there was more manners and more values,
I see it.
more respect.
Beautiful.
Yeah, and that was it. We had a better life. We had a safer society. We had better education.
Besides degeneration and some of the factors you mentioned, you know, like depression, emotional depression, what other factors are known to contribute to this condition? They mentioned they found aluminum in the systems of the brain of patients with Alzheimer's.
Okay.
So what other, is that so?
There's 4 types of cell death. One is, well, all the reasons for cell death is there's a lack of oxygen, that the brain just doesn't get enough oxygen. In our environment, just by breathing, if we live near a freeway, if we're just, you know, taking a jogging experience, we're taking in these pollutants in our system, and very rarely are we able to get those toxins out of our system. I mean, there's some nutritional support, there's chelation, there's homeopathic herbs and things that can do that, but we don't know exactly how to get those out. There's just not breathing enough. You know, some people just don't exercise, so if you're not getting enough oxygen to the brain, then as you get older, if you don't drink water and keep, you know, our brains oxygenated, they actually begin to shrivel and they get smaller. So you always want to hydrate well, and you always want to just do whatever you can to do the deep breathing, walking, yoga, whatever you can to keep that up. Then there is a genetic component. It's true. However, I'm genetically predispositioned, and I don't have any belief that I'll get the illness because I'm already doing preventative things today and started 20 years ago. And then the other thing is that when there's not proper nutrition in the body, then our DNA and RNA cells can't duplicate. So that's how our cells are made, from going back to 8th grade biology. You know, you have the RNA and the DNA, and then they connect and they make new RNA and DNA. So if you don't have the right, then you're going to end up with cells that can't duplicate, and so you're going to have cell loss that way. So those are the basic 4 reasons for cell loss. Now, there are some people walking around with high aluminum, high silver, high mercury, and they're fine. Then there's other people with Alzheimer's disease that have high silver, high mercury, you know, high aluminum, and they're not fine. And what that has to do with is something called the blood-brain barrier. And so I don't know a lot about that, but all I know is you go look in a nutrition book and you think, let me take everything I need to take to make sure I have a strong blood-brain barrier. When you have a strong one, it's kind of like having a net in the ocean. And, little fish can't get through or big fish can't get through. It can't permeate. And our brain is permeable. So you want the thing that's going to keep the bad stuff out and keep the good stuff in. So a lot of this stuff just makes sense, The last thing is when you think of a plant, okay? And let's say there was drought for maybe, and hot sun. And one of the branches just, fell off. It is just crumbling. And maybe that could be like our brain, that we've got a part of it that's deteriorating. Well, what do you do with a tree? If you want to say you could throw it away and that'd be the end of it, or yes, you water it. And then you might want to give it extra fertilizer, right? And then some people sing to it. They play classical music for it. They talk to it. And then it starts to flourish. And I think as individual human beings, whether we're just regular or Alzheimer's people, we all respond to touch and care and nourishment and nourishing and love. And I think that's really the theme. So I thank you so much for being here. This, as you can see, is my pleasure.